Welcome to Phil Margo, The Lion Roars, exclusively on MalcolmPresents.com. Phil, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm pretty good today. How about yourself?
I went to my dermatologist and she said I'm fine. Really nice. That's nice. She said, you look great. You're healthy. Go, go, go.
Are you full of derms?
Yeah, and she's lovely and she's smart and she's terrific. Anyway, so I enjoy going there, and she really, she had to cut a little thing out of me and stuff, but I'm fine, and everything is healed great, and I'm okay. And so, one of the things we didn't touch on, we kind of skimmed over a lot of stuff of the early career, and one of the things that we never talked about was record hops. Record hops were the way that new artists got their record played on local radio stations. In other words, you didn't get your record on ABC on a 50,000 watt station. Obviously, it's blowing your nose.
Well, actually, no one could see it.
Anyway,
actually, only you could see it because I have you on a single camera.
Oh, so you're not on camera at all?
I'm not on camera at all now. I switch. This is
okay. All right. Okay.
I play director.
Anyway. Okay. Anyway, to get airplay for records, of course, there was payola was going on at that time. That was in the early '60s, but where they would give DJ, jockeys $50 or so, whatever, to play a record,
or an ounce of cocaine to the biggest stations.
But to get on the biggest stations, you needed to show that the record had some juice, that the record had some attraction, that people were buying it, or interested in, or calling it, or requesting it, And the way you got it on the smaller stations was the regular promotion men would go and do their thing, but you would do record hops. The DJs would run these record hops where they would make money, they would get paid, the kids would pay to come in, and the acts would perform for free because they would get a chance to do you lip sync, and have the actions, dum doobie dum, whoa, doobie doobie, and we had to make up motions to the songs and stuff. And you just do it to the record.
You guys didn't get paid? You guys didn't get paid for that?
No, we got paid. We got paid if the disc jockey was satisfied with what we did. They would add the record. They would play it. There was different ways. They would give it one. They would play it once a day. They would play it once a week. They would put it on a full cycle. Which would break the record.
Yeah. Did you have to pay for transportation and hotels or wherever you stayed?
That was paid for by the record label. That was part of promotion. So now Philadelphia was a big market because it had all the locals, Allentown, all those local markets around it. So we would go to the Philadelphia area, but we wouldn't get on the big station right away. We would go local and drive out to Allentown and the smaller cities around Philadelphia and the smaller neighborhoods around Philadelphia. And we would do the record hops. We would do sometimes 5 or 6 one night. You go from one to the next. Bam, bam, bam.
How many groups?
One time we went to.
How many groups went on?
There would be 3 or 4.
3 or 4.
There'd be 3 or 4 groups or 5 groups. I mean, we worked with all of the big groups at the time. We did the Dion and the Belmonts. We did record hops with everybody who was having hits at the time. And one time we stayed at the Penn Sheraton Hotel in Philadelphia because we were getting some good airplay in directly in Philadelphia by the station WFIL. I don't remember, but and we spent the day at the hotel, and we were like bored to tears. I mean, the movies about the record business that show women running into your room naked, it wasn't true. It just didn't happen, And so what we did was one day we were bored and we took the stationery and made paper airplanes. And the Penn Sheridan had windows that you could open. So we would take paper airplanes, we'd make them and we'd throw them out the window. And they'd sail all the way across. They sail, I mean, they'd get caught in an updraft and they would go for miles, right? And we see these horde of like 50 or 60 paper airplanes flying out over the city, right? And we did a record hop at the other 10, that night we did a record hop at the other end of town and we found one of them.
You should have written messages
We
in
must
them.
have sent 100 of them out, you know what I mean, or more. And we found one of them. It was amazing. You know, so we used to just do things to keep ourselves interested, you know. And you know, we were all single at the time, but you know, it wasn't as easy. Those groups, single artists had that, you know, guys who were like single artists, like you know, I don't know, Frankie
Avalon.
Frankie Avalon and Fabian and them, and you know, it was easier for them. A group was hard, you know, you were in a group, you know, and you know, we did meet girls now and again. I mean, I'm not saying it was totally barren, but it wasn't like the movie show, you know, it wasn't that way. I mean, there were a few times where women walked over and offered themselves, you know, but mostly you had to work at it if you wanted to do that, you know.
Yeah, well, I think maybe there was Nearer with groupies. I think they still have it, but I think that was like the major bands.
Yeah,
That
the
did
major
their tours.
bands and the major artists, like, you know, Presley and people like that, you know, they would, but you know, we were a vocal group who had a hit song, and you know, it wasn't like they show.
Uh-huh.
You know, it really wasn't. I mean, for some guys it was. You know, some guys went out and made a thing of it. You know, I wasn't that way.
Yeah.
But
or not that you admit to.
what?
Or not that you admit. No, I believe you.
No. I mean, I'm not saying that I was totally. It was devoid, but it wasn't what they say it was. You know, only in the very hottest group. And don't forget, Tonight I Fell in Love was a nice hit. It got us on the charts. The Lion Sleeps Tonight was a monster, but then we started producing, and we didn't really. We did two things. I did personally two things. One, I wasn't social, and that was a mistake. As I look at the industry now, I wasn't even social when I got into the movies and television. Part of the business of conducting business in show business is a social relationship with people in the business. And I think I mentioned this already once, but I think it's worth repeating. It was a mistake. I didn't like most of them. So I didn't want to hang with them because I didn't like them. And I thought that if I did it just to advance my career, it was dishonest, right?
Yeah.
Which is probably, it sounds nice, but it probably wasn't the wisest thing in the world, because you don't have to like the person to do business with them, as I found out later on. You know, I just read in the newspaper that Doug Kramer died, you know, and he did The Love Boat. You know, he was, you know, spelling Kramer.
Mm-hmm.
He was with spelling, and somebody, a friend of mine, got us an appointment to pitch. We had a Love Boat idea for him, and it was different than anything he ever did. And so we went and pitched it to him. It was about smuggling on the Love Boat, smuggling chocolates that were really jewel diamonds,
Okay.
right? And they would smuggle the chocolates, and you know, it was that kind of thing. And it was really a gangster thing, you know, a bad guy, good guy, bad guy thing, which they never really did on the Love Boat.
No.
And he loved that, you know.
But
She said,
they
that's,
had,
we never,
yeah, they generally
what?
had like three or four separate stories, depending on who
Yeah, well,
who did the love boat.
there were two sets of writers. We wrote the scam part of the book,
Yeah,
the crime part of the story, and they wrote the love part of the story, and we put them together. That's how it worked.
Love and crime.
Um,
Yes.
yes, and and the the thievery thing was that they were smuggling in on the level. They were smuggling diamonds in candy boxes. I
But
mean,
getting back to what you were talking to about before, about being friendly with certain people for business wise, that that's business in general. Because I had been in radio sales and management, and that's called, there's a Yiddish word for that called schmoozing. You
right,
have to
schmoozing. Yeah,
you have to be able to schmooze.
yeah, I was able to schmooze when I was in a room, but after the room, I went home. I made a decision that, I could have stayed in the city every night and hung out with people
Mm,
and, whatever they did. But I didn't want to because I wanted to be home with my family. I wanted to be
yeah.
home with my wife. I wanted to be home with my kids. And I just didn't. And that was the trade. And I think I probably could have done a little simple that I could have had relationships with that would have been helpful to me and I would have been helpful to them, but I didn't do it. I wasn't social.
Okay.
And you see people today, they play golf, they play tennis, I mean, Norman Lloyd. I don't know if you know who Norman
It
Lloyd
just
is.
passed away a few months ago
Yes, exactly.
at
He,
106.
right, 160 years. He was just charming. Ben Mankiewicz had interviewed him I think a few years ago.
Did you know him or you just knew of him?
No, I knew of him. Uh, I knew of him, but he he was a big schmoozer.
Oh, really?
What he owes his career to the fact that he was very social. He got friendly with but you talk about the people, Hitchcock, Charlie Chaplin. He was pals with them.
Well,
You
wasn't
know,
he part of the Mercury Theater with
yes,
Orson Welles?
yes, yes, yes. And he also was blacklisted that, because the Mercury Theater was part of that liberal wing, you know, the left wing of theater, which was always associated with communism, which it wasn't. It's such a nonsense thing. It's such horseshit that you just want to scream. But so he was blacklisted, and it was Hitchcock that got him back on the air.
Mhm.
When Hitchcock did his show, you know, Hitchcock did a show and he wanted Norman on it, and the network said you can't have him. And Hitchcock said, if I don't have Norman, I won't do the show.
In fact, I think there was just a movie with Norman Lloyd. I think it's called Sabotage.
Yeah, that was with Robert Cummings, but he did one
Right,
recently.
but he was part of the movie.
With Emma Thompson and oh, come on, Phil. Oh, it was a love story between Emma Thompson and
Okay,
Tootsie. Tootsie, who played Tootsie.
so it's Terry Garr. No,
No, who played Tootsie?
Dustin Hoffman.
Dustin Hoffman. Sorry, Dustin Hoffman was in it, and it was a love story between them. And Norman Lloyd was the teacher teaching her dramatics, writing, and he was wonderful, and it was so great to see him.
Mhm.
So and he was very social, and he knew
Yeah.
all of them. I mean, he could go back and talk about people who are just in history, and he could talk about them, up until 1929.
Well, I know in the radio industry and the television industry, it would be advantage to your advantage if you played golf and played
Yes.
as well, because more business was done in the golf course when at the different holes you made friends, and then if you knew what you were doing, you'd throw, you do your little sales pitch, and then you go back to playing golf, and then you go to the 19th hole and have a few drinks.
And the first movie that I sold the first deal that I sold to ABC was as a result of being at Benson taping in the green room with the vice president of the network,
Yeah.
schmoozing.
Schmoozing.
And I said, "Oh, I have this idea." He said, "Oh, I like that. Call me. I'll send you down to the development department." Once, and I said this before, once it comes from upstairs to downstairs, you get a deal. You get at least a development deal.
Well, that's why they, yeah. That's why they, yeah. That's why they say sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. Even though your idea is great, if you don't get it to the right person.
It's true. It's absolutely true. And I was lucky that time swayed me into these relationships with people who had power, and I was smart enough at least to act on it. I didn't let it go, but I didn't remain friendly. I could have remained. I met all kinds of people that all I had to do was call them once in a while and stay in touch, and I didn't do it. I have a meeting this week on with somebody who I met years ago, who I should have stayed in touch with, and I didn't. And this gentleman is involved in he just did a Hallmark movie, But luckily, my son worked with him when he was on the school board, because this particular guy was very instrumental in helping Noah get his ideas through to help the schools, because this guy's children were in the school system. And so, and I could have stayed friendly with him. I could have, but I just, I'm not that way. And I don't think I could ever have been that way. If I had to live my life over again and make the choice, I'd probably make the same choice.
Yeah, well, as you said, your priority was coming home with your wife and kids. So
yeah, I
that's,
have a cousin who likes this show that we're doing. He watches it every week, Jeff, and he knew everybody in town. His name was on the wall of the what's the restaurant, the big one where everybody gets signs?
well, there's one in the Palm.
And the Palm in New York. And he has his picture up on it.
And the Sardis also, I believe.
Right. He has his picture on it.
And what did Jeff do? Or what does he do?
What now?
Yeah, well, what did he do then?
He made album covers, all the big labels. He was involved with all the record labels. He did some of the big albums, his company, He was very much in the business. And really, I mean, he knew everybody. Where I, who was making hit after hit after hit, knew no one.
Well, I have an idea. Why don't you call Jeff, have him do the show with you? I'd love to see both of you talk.
I would have him. Yes, that's definitely true. Jeff, if you hear this show, we want you on.
Yeah, I mean, I love, the
His
fact
name is
that
Jeff Prager.
Jeff Prager?
Yeah, Brager.
Oh, Prager, okay.
And he's my cousin.
Yeah.
He's actually a cousin of mine, a real cousin, a blood cousin. I think. Well, yeah, right.
Well, that's, I mean, that's part of my show. I want you, I mean, you have so much history and you know so many people, and you can bring, I want to bring that era.
Absolutely.
I want to bring that era alive.
We'll get Norm this week, and next week we'll get Norm Fox.
Right.
You don't want to have more than one person. It gets too confusing.
No, because
I don't even like it when they do it on the network and they show 4 boxes. That's ridiculous. That's nonsense.
No, the 3 of us, and basically, I want you to just to talk to each other, and I'll stay in the background. Because
they talk well for themselves.
Yeah.
He could tell some great stories, Jeff, because he dealt with the hot shots in the industry, the guys who ran labels that I hardly ever talked to. Our hits were mostly on small labels. He dealt with Atlantic, he dealt with the biggest labels. He knew all of the big shots,
Who are the people in that era that you admire, that you looked up to?
What do you mean, producers?
No, artists.
Well,
or did you, or they were all?
Oh no, I mean, Peter, Paul, and Mary. Oh, there, Crosby, Stills and Nash,
Uh,
and going further back, I liked the Four Seasons did some great work. They did some beautiful work. They had great songs. Bob Gaudio wrote some wonderful stuff. Um, there were a lot of groups that really were really good. The music was good then. It was really good. It was varied. It wasn't one kind of thing. It was different. The station would have, Perry Como would sing, and then The Lion Sleeps Tonight would come on. You know what I mean? It was like top 40 radio was really wonderful. Now they're teaching people to go in a line. I think that's a mistake. I think the variance of all that music was wonderful, that you could hear. You could hear Frankie Lane and the Tokens, and then Raunchy. I mean, and nobody thought it was weird. Everybody said that's what top 40 is. Different people like different things.
But what they do now is, since the industry basically is controlled by the large companies that own 100 stations, 200 stations throughout the country. So the DJ does not necessarily pick out the music that he wants to play.
No, they never. No.
What they do is they have a focus group, and they have to, and what they do, and what the DJ gets is a list of songs that he has to play in a certain rotation. It has
Yeah,
to be somebody.
but you still see the artists of stature are still in the business. You know what I mean? They're still there.
Yeah.
And you still see that the song "The Lion Sleeps Tonight," our version, is still popular. People still sing it.
The Lion Sleeps Tonight. There's certain songs that are classics. I
Yeah,
mean, it skips generations.
It sounds just as good now as it did then.
Yeah. I mean, I speak to people, when I mention that, say Phil Margo, okay, the name is not recognizable necessarily unless they know music. I talk about the Tokens. They're not sure who the Tokens are.
No, that's right.
But I say A Lion Sleeps Tonight. Oh, now they know it.
We were probably the most underappreciated producers. We made a lot of hit records. In 10 years, we made hit records every single year, our small little company, but none of them were with major labels. They were, Tony Orlando and Dawn was on Jubilee or whatever it was. No, Tony Orlando and Dawn was on, I'm sorry, what was it on Jubilee? The Happenings were on our record, Beat Puppy, which is a small label. Tony Orlando and Dawn was on Arista, and originally it was Bell, actually. So it was Bell Records, which was a small label. It wasn't a big label.
Have you retained the rights to any of these songs?
No, we never had the rights to any of it. We get royalties. We get royalties from the Chiffons records, though. We still get royalties from that.
And which one is that?
And from the stuff we did on RCA. But we never really got the recognition for what we did. I mean, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame wouldn't even think about us. Yet when you look at this wall, and the fact that we did The Lion Sleeps Tonight, which is one of the greatest records of all time, it still comes in the top 100 of records of all times, and they won't even consider us.
Listen, I don't think a day or two goes by when I'm listening to radio or listening to something on television that Lion Sleeps Tonight doesn't come on. Right. And it just brings a smile to my face.
Well, one of our songs, the Chiffons, or we just were not really noticed. We're like the Glenn Fords of the record industry. He had a phenomenal body of work. And when you look at his body of work, you look at Glenn Ford, the westerns he made. He just made some terrific movies. Dramas. I mean, really, he was excellent, and he was so good in them. And they don't talk about it. Every once in a while, the Western Channel will do Glenn Ford movies.
That's something about the thing which I guess you're missing, which it's just the way of the world, is a PR agent. Because if someone presses a lot of the things like the Walk of Fame in Hollywood. I would say that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is the same. You have to have somebody promoting you there. If you don't have someone promoting you, you
It
get
was,
lost.
no, you want me to make it simple? I'm gonna make it simple. During our success, all of the big shots of the labels gave us no credit. Those were the people who wound up running the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So if you didn't recognize us when we were doing it, why recognize us now?
Because
Because
all the people,
we did a lot more. We had a lot more success than a lot of people who are in it. You know,
oh yeah, but I
and
get,
as artists and producers, we had gold records as artists and gold records as producers with different artists. Not many people did that then.
yeah.
You know, it was rare. And you know, if Hank didn't, screw us up and walk away, we could have continued. We probably would have eventually gotten the recognition because they wouldn't have been. You know, at the time we broke up, we had 5 records on the charts. That's unheard of.
Which were the records? What were the titles?
Oh, I don't. I know. I don't know offhand what they were.
Oh, okay.
I know it was a Tony Orlando record, a Token record, a Chiffon's record. You know, I mean, it was like, and some new people. You know what I mean? We had new artists. We were making almost every record we made and put out got on the charts.
Going back to the artists, who was like, you know, when you were younger and doing your work with other groups, who was there a group or an artist that you looked at and you said, holy God, I'm working with them, that you looked up and you realized that you were on the same bill or equal to them, that you said, then you realized that, yeah.
Well, the most interesting thing, we worked with Chuck Berry. But Chuck Berry back in the day was a different Chuck Berry. And we were playing in Miami. I think there was a show near this. There was a Super Bowl at the time. I'm not sure about that. I don't remember, but Chuck Berry was on the bill, and we were going to go on, and Chuck was standing in the wings on this. It was outdoors, but it was. And I walked over and I shook hands with him. I said, "It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. I think your stuff is great. You started all of this, and I just want to thank you." And he shook my hand, he smiled. And then when they announced us, he patted me on the ass. He said, "Go get him, kid." You know, I mean, it was like that. It was, you know, those moments. I mean, we worked. We did the New York Paramount Theater. It was a benefit for muscular dystrophy or something. I don't remember exactly, but when we were the only group that they weren't yelling, "We want the Beatles." We went on before the Beatles, and the audience enjoyed us, listened to us, applauded us, recognized our work, and through all the other acts that were yelling, "We want the Beatles," not with us. And it said in the review, the Tokens came off best by far. You know.
Wow. Did you get to meet the Beatles by any chance?
Mitchell met Paul. He walked upstairs and Paul was on the staircase, and Mitchell went up and introduced himself. But none of us really never met them. No. But later on, George Harrison bought a record from us. You know, we did a record with Brute Force. We did a record with Brute Force called The King of Pho.
Okay? The King of Pho?
The King of Pho. There was a land called Pho, and in this land there was a king, and everybody called him the Pho King. That's the song.
It would be Pho you.
The Pho King. and Stephen wrote the song. We recorded it, and we sent it to John Lennon's George Harrison's manager or somebody. He sent it to George Harrison. George Harrison put the Philharmonic Orchestra over it. You know, they wrote parts, they had strings and all kinds of things, and they released it on Apple, and it's still on Apple. Apple did a special edition.
Wow.
And so we never met George Harrison, and it was funny because then after that, he was the one who stole "He's So Fine" from My Sweet Lord, and we had to sue him. You know, it's weird.
But as I say, imitation is the best compliment.
Weird. It was a stimulative. I was at the Bangladesh concert, and George Harrison comes out and introduces his new song, "My Sweet Lord," and it sounds like "He's So Fine." Exactly, note for note, 8 bars, exact.
Mm.
Was even. I mean, you know. So we. I mean, we were involved in some pretty wacky stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it must be kind of difficult because I know, because like when there's a hit song, especially being a writer, when there's a hit song, you listen to it, and then a year later, all of a sudden, song comes into your mind, and you hear, as you say, the 8 bars or whatever, and you say that sounds good, and you don't even. It doesn't have to be intentional. You might just remember that tune and write
Yeah,
it
but
down.
you know what? Phil Spector was involved with that record.
Mhm.
And Phil Spector was at the BMI Awards dinner when He's So Fine won a BMI award. He knew He's So Fine.
Okay.
He knew it. He knew it. And so did Harrison. They knew it.
Then
That wasn't an accident.
okay.
That was an absolute steal. He could jump up and down all he wants, but it was a steal. A melody, sometimes a melody will sneak in a little part of a melody, 2 bars, 3 bars. That's not enough. This was 8 bars, and he's so my sweet Lord, oh my sweet. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Come on.
See, I don't have an ear for music, so you're the one that knows about that. But I know a lot of the times
Well,
when
the court said it was. The court said it was a steal.
Yeah, well, a lot of the times when I see movies, there's a certain segment of a movie, and I say that's from, and it's sort of like that same theme or the same story from another movie, one of the classics.
Yeah, next week, hopefully next week, we'll get my friend who did Tell Me Why. I have a friend that we didn't meet at the time. Tell Me Why was out before we started.
Hum a few bars of Tell Me Why.
Tell me why my heart skips a beat every time that you're near, every time that we meet. I love you, yes I do. Wow, wow, oh, won't you tell me? Norm Fox and the Rob Roys.
And the Rob Roys.
And hopefully Norm will be, and he wrote some other good stuff which they recorded. And we did a concert with them in San Pedro, I think it was. I don't know, he'll remember. And we played for him, which was a big thing. We played the music. So
anyway, Phil, I hate to tell you, but our time is up.
I always look forward to the next one.
Yeah, so next week we'll see if we can get Norm on. Can't promise, but I will contact him.
Yes.
Okay.
And his children are amazing. He has amazing. He'll tell you about his kids.
Are they in the industry?
I think a couple of them. I think one of them is a big time orchestrally. I mean, he'll tell you. I don't want to spoil it. They're really terrific.
Yeah. Michael J. Fox.
I don't know Michael J. Fox.
Oh,
I know
okay.
Norm Fox. I never met Michael J. But I did do the twist with Anne Margaret on a television show in California.
Well, and we'll find out that story next week. Have a great week, kid.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.